Hey there, Mark. Well, just to put this in perspective, we are about as far away from San Diego as you could be in the continental United States, to over 2,600 miles to be exact. And that's one of the reasons that those 170 delegates that you mentioned say it's so important to come here and get FaceTime with the people who work here. They're elected representatives like Senator Alex Padilla, who works in the building to my right. Many of them got an opportunity to meet with him today, but also the other members of San Diego's congressional delegation are representatives who work in the building behind me there. That's Mike Levin, Sarah Jacobs, Scott Peters, Daryl Issa, and Juan Vargas. And, you know, it's
really seems that San Diego and its elected officials and stakeholders are really trying to grow this city and this region's profile on the national stage.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. You know, San Diego isn't just a normal local municipality with local issues. Being that we're right on the border, there is a lot when it comes to border issues like migrant crossings or border trade that really is, you know, it captures the attention of the people here on Capitol Hill. And not just that, as you mentioned, we are such a big military hub, one of the biggest active duty concentration of Navy personnel in the entire country. So, of course, that makes issues of national security of utmost importance to us back in San Diego. So today, for example, people who came on the delegation got an opportunity to tour the Pentagon and speak to high-level national security experts about issues that really could affect us back in San Diego, but also have national repercussions as well. So there's so many ties between San Diego and Washington, D.C., and we really saw them spotlighted on this trip this week.
More federal dollars headed our way. Priya, good afternoon.
That's absolutely right. Well, over the last few days, the delegates who are attending this trip have had an opportunity to meet with a variety of people like CBP officials to talk about the long wait times on the San Diego-Mexico border, also the Mexican ambassador to talk about cross-border trade and pollution, also officials from... And by the way, speaking of Juan Vargas, one of the most exciting parts of the trip, from what I've heard from delegates, is a late-night Capitol tour led by Representative Vargas, that it's going to be happening in just a few moments. It's a 3-hour tour. It's kind of extensive, so it's a really great opportunity for delegates to get a behind-the-scenes tour from one of our own elected leaders.
So, Priya, last month, San Diego hosted 3 heads of state, including President Biden, to discuss a new military agreement on submarine technology. You and I covered that together. Well, with events like that one and the chamber delegation this week, does it appear that San Diego's profile is growing on the national stage?
Absolutely, you know, and that's one of the things that I spoke to the head of San Diego's Regional Chamber of Commerce, Jerry Sanders, about. I said, hey, do other cities across the United States make trips like this? And he said, yes, they do, but not to the scale that San Diego does. This is the biggest binational delegation to come to Washington, D.C. on an annual basis, and it's grown from around 30 people all the way to 170, as you mentioned. And they really believe that that's one of the reasons that San Diego really stands out when it comes to getting that federal money that we were talking about when their applications are placed against other cities that might not get as much face time with the leaders here in Washington, D.C., guys. And some of you have been asking, how much does this trip actually cost? Well, the price tag for delegates depends on when you registered. It ranged anywhere from $1,900 to $4,000 per person. And we don't have a clear idea of exactly how much federal funding is a direct result of meetings that happened on trips like this. But the people I spoke to here say the networking opportunities and the tips and guidance that they've been getting from attending these meetings have really been invaluable to them.
And Priya, looking ahead, what's on the agenda for tomorrow?
So tomorrow, the delegates have an opportunity to either attend tours of the Pentagon or the State Department and talk to officials in both of those places about border issues over at the State Department and also military and national security issues over at the Pentagon. They'll also have a chance to talk to Department of Transportation officials about how to secure funding from the Inflation Reduction Act, similar to that meeting that happened today with the Housing and Urban Development officials, how to fill out those applications, how to make the application more competitive.
Priya, you covered politics for us. I mean, San Diego City Hall and the Biden administration share a lot of the same political views. They have enjoyed a cordial relationship, and at the same time, there's Congress, which is split. You have a Republican-controlled House. So what kind of clout will San Diego have, or will that really be measured when we see how much money this region gets?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And, they're having meetings today and tomorrow with members of San Diego's congressional delegations whose job it really is to represent the priorities of this region. But, Mayor Todd Gloria told me today that it's helpful to have people who really have that lived experience in San Diego. They live there full time to tell not just our congressional representatives, but those government officials and bureaucrats about what it's like to wait at the border for hours on end or have your business closed down because they're dealing with, cross-border pollution in the beach area. So they really believe that having that firsthand experience and being able to relay that to these government officials will keep it in the top of their heads when they go to vote on things and really remember those stories that the San Diegans are telling them on this trip.
Political reporter Priya DC is in Washington with the delegation and joins us now with more. Priya, good evening.
Good evening, Mark. Well, have you ever heard that phrase, making laws is like making sausage? It might be better not to see exactly how that process works. Well, here in Washington, D.C., we are getting a little bit of a behind the scenes peek as to what that might look like as far as lobbying for federal dollars and also advocating for the region's key issues and priorities.
It's going to be competitive. Certainly it's going to be high profile. And Priya, there's already some candidates who've said they want to take part in this race.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be extremely expensive, I should add. So House Democrats Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee have already launched campaigns. And just today we had our first Republican candidate enter the race. His name is Eric Early. He's an attorney from the Los Angeles area. Well, guys, not a whole lot. The county supervisors actually asked county council if they actually have any power over if and when Nathan Fletcher resigns, and the answer was no. This might add a little bit more pressure on Nathan Fletcher to resign sooner, but his office has maintained that Nathan Fletcher is unreachable right now because he is in inpatient treatment. Former MTS employee Gracia Figueroa is alleging that she was wrongfully terminated after she was sexually harassed by the chair of the MTS board at the time, Nathan Fletcher. Now questions are being raised about what exactly the MTS board knew and when. It was a very emotional city council meeting. As you mentioned, one of those two men was staying at the Motel 6 here in El Cajon through a county probation program. And now city council is demanding answers from the county. They want to know how that man was placed at that motel that was less than 3/4 of a mile from Cajon Valley Middle School and Johnson Elementary School. So City Council went into closed session to discuss the legality of a 90-day moratorium with the city attorney. Ultimately, they came back into open session and said they had to do a little bit more research until they considered it again. Reporting live from El Cajon, Priya DC, NBC 7. So after that visit to Alvarado Hospital, Governor Newsom came here to a National Guard post where he spoke about the importance of tackling the fentanyl crisis. And we're going to have more on that coming up in our 6 p.m. newscast. But for now, yeah, Omari, that's right. So in each of those stops, he actually decided to highlight an issue. Reducing homelessness was one of them, healthcare reform, and also public safety. The issue that he wanted to focus on here in San Diego was modernizing the behavioral health system and also adding more mental health beds. Good evening, Mark and Catherine. Well, it wasn't just President Biden who made a visit to San Diego today. The heads of state of the UK and Australia also traveled with him to Naval Base Point Loma, where they announced details of the AUKUS partnership. That's a military pact between the three countries that would ultimately arm Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. Now, one immediate change we will see is that sailors with the Australian Navy and civilian personnel working with the Australian Navy will be embedding in both American and British nuclear-powered submarines to learn how to train and operate on them.